Hello, this is Sarah, Painty Creator here. I hope you're having a lovely day. So I'm just having a go at a snowscape today. And I'm using my Arche watercolour paper. Just looking at the size, 9" by 12". And I've just taped it to the board and I'm just doing my preliminary sketch. So it's based upon a photo from Pixabay, which I'll share in a little minute, but it's a loose base of that. I always think it's useful to have a reference of some description, but you don't really need to follow it slavishly. So it's just a gentle mountain range. We're at the top of the piste. I'm going to just pull that over there so that it doesn't go into the centre of the painting too much. And then we've got a couple of wires, and let's put a cable car somewhere around here. So again, we're off centre. Probably better a bit higher up. Let's move that out, let me sketch that. There we go, that's quite better. And then maybe another one that's probably going down here a little bit smaller. Less detail. There we go. Actually, you probably see, oops, that's one. You probably see the left hand side, because in fact you can see that left hand side, you potentially would see this as the left hand side. So we'll put that as the front. There we go. Maybe a tiny one. Yeah, let's put that one a little bit bigger. I am pressing on harder than I would normally, just so that you can see really. Yeah, I think that works. And then we'll have a nice wide slope in the foreground, and we'll put some skiers on there. So there we are, there's the sketch. If you need the drawing, just pause and screenshot it or join my Patreon and then you will be able to get it. If you can join the Patreon, it's only round about £5–6 a month, and that would be really great to support my work. So a little bit of putty rubber going over it. So this is Arche rough paper, and I'm going to use my usual Cotman watercolour paint set, which is this one, but I'm also going to use some Moonglow Daniel Smith's. If you haven't got Moonglow, I suggest you use Dioxidine Purple or similar, this violet purple, because it's a nice colour, and it's quite similar, and you could always add a little bit of pink into it and see how it goes, because the Moonglow has got a bit of a pink undertone and a bit of a blue undertone. So today's sketch is roughly based upon this one, which is from Pixabay, and these nice mountain ridges, and this one. So it's got that sort of composite nature that I quite often work with, and I'm not going to slavishly work with these, but let's see how we go. So I'm going to start off by turning my board upside down, getting my large mop brush because that's my favourite. I'm wetting this sky area. I'm going to go over where those wires and everything are, just letting the water go in. And I'm just going to do a really simple sky. So I'm going to start with a little bit of Cerulean Blue in my palette with plenty of water. I'm going to drop a little bit of red light into there just to take the edge off a little bit. I don't want the brightness, it's I want the colours to enhance each other. And I'm going to do the same with a little bit of Cobalt Blue, which is Cerulean Blue with an ultramarine mix, touch of red light into there, and it'll just tone it down ever so slightly. I don't want it toned down totally, but I do want it to sit comfortably. So I'm going to start with my Cerulean Blue and just work along the edge of these hills. Because I want that to be the lightest. And then I'm going to go in with some Cobalt Blue. And just let that mix on the page. So you get a nice, gentle, soft morning glow of a sky. Nothing too brash. So if you're liking my YouTube channel, if you can like and subscribe and share it with your friends, that's really good. I'm a disabled artist, creator, and I work within my limitations, so I live with both visible and invisible disabilities. So this channel's really for all of us who just want a little bit of a low-tech, slower, gentler space. So I hope you're finding that. So there we go. A nice, gentle sky, I can just go around, double check that I've got all those little bits touching that I want, because it's still wet, and that's great. So at this point you might be saying, why turn your board round? Why did you do that? Well, I work on around about 20 degrees, and so gravity helps me keep that going in the right direction, and it helps it come together, and it means it's easier as well for me because it's nearer to me. So if you have your board on your paper taped to a board, that's one of the bonuses that you've got. Right, this is starting to dry now. I've got my heating on, so I need to stop going back in to it. If you find when you move your board around that you've got a pooling of paint and water, just wash your brush, take the excess off on a paper towel and use the brush as a straw to suck up the pigment, and I call it a thirsty brush, and that will be really helpful to you. So I'm just popping a little bit of Moonglow into my palette, and I'm also going to just put together a really watery mix of Cobalt Blue with a little bit of either Alizarin Crimson or Purple Lake. You basically wanting it. I'm going to put some Purple Lake in because I want the purple tones. I'm wanting to make it a little bit more purple and less blue in some places. Might move some of that over there. Just for different tones. So that's a blue tone, and hopefully that's a more purpley tone. And then I might just put a little bit of a pinker tone over here. So pink and Alizarin Crimson and Cobalt Blue. Needs a bit more watering, but I can do that. So I've got lots of different tones of blues there, which is really helpful, because I don't want the same blue to be all the way across. I want those different tones to come in. So I'm going to continue with my little mop brush. I could swap onto one of my little medium brushes, but I like my mop brushes, and they help me to just feel like I don't know, they're like good friends. So I'm starting off with a really pale wash, so lots of water, probably about 90% water, and I'm just using my paper towel to control my water. I'm just going to start off doing some distant shadow areas. Hopefully you can see the subtlety of that purple against the blue. And you are drawing out the shape of the stones and whatever's around on the ridges, using just lots of water, remembering that it will go lighter and just wanting this to be the brighter end of some water to soften down some of those harder edges. add a tiny bit of this Moonglow into this bit that's the other side of this foreground. Soften some of those edges away. I'm just using a mixture of those blues and purples to start telling the story of what the hills are doing. Just dropping a little bit of that Moonglow into this base. So lovely pale colours. And they're just telling the story of what's around. And if you don't like them, you can smooth them away and it'll go to next to nothing. You'll be able to pick them up with your paper towel. So I'm going to work on this one. And some rocky outcrops here. I'm just going to drop in some of this darker Moonglow. As I said, you could pop in your own mix of Dioxidine Purple and I'm trying to sort of join things up a little bit so it looks a little bit more natural and soften it down because it's in the distance, but I do want it to sort of read as something. I'm just looking at the shapes that are on these hills in the photograph and picking out some bits and pieces. I'm going to swap now onto my little number 2 brush so I can get some smaller lines. So a little bit's bled into the sky here, but there's not a lot I can do. I went too close to the sky before it was drying. Gosh, that one's blue. I must have picked up quite a bit of paint in that one. So down this side of there's quite a steep slope, so I'm just trying to get that idea of that steepness of the slope with my brush strokes. And then there's the other side on this side. So it's just taking your time to tell the story of the hill. I'm just going to soften that edge at the bottom away a little bit. And the same down this side here. I think it's a bit too in your face, so I want it softer. Okay, so we're building that idea of a hillside. Just give my arms a little bit of a rest. So this at the back here is much lighter. It's more distant. I'm just using those really pale blues, not a lot of purpley colour. Blues will always push things further back. Clean water, just soften away. Just dropping a really watery moonlight or what, Moonglow in. Just giving it, just having a look at it and going, yeah, that flows. So this one's a little bit nearer. So I'm going to use a bit more of this Moonglow and the blue together. Still really, really watery. And I'm just looking at the sort of shapes of the rocky outcrops here. I'm just going to soften those with some water. And drop in a different tone. Now on the photo these are really dark, but I don't want that really heavy dark in the photo because I don't want it to be distracting from the brightness of what it is to be up on the mountains and skiing and enjoying that. So I'm using a bit of artistic license, which is fine. I'm just going to go in with my little mop brush down here. Let's just smooth it off. I'm going to add some trees. Again, I'm probably not going to add the trees in terms of the colours that are on the on the photograph, because the orangey brown might not sit particularly well. we'll see. So I'm just building up this little bit of foreground, telling you a little bit more information about what's there. Softening off using a damp mop brush underneath some of these areas. You can also drop in some water like that and then let it run. Which is really quite a nice technique. So let's go back to here. So this is just going on dry at the top. So a little damp brush will just soften the under edges into the paper. If you want the mixture of hard and soft lines, I always find it really nice. I'm just taking my time. Soften that off. So the direction of your brush strokes is telling you about this mountain, how steep it is, what's there. Because basically the mountain is covered in snow, but the darker tones are where the stones and everything else is breaking through. I'm just going to put a bit more detail on here. So there's a little bit of an outcrop. And you can always do that. You can always go back in, spend as much time as you want doing the hills, in that sort of sense of direction. I'm just going to go back in with my little mop brush now. I like my little mop brush. Just some water, let it soften off. Different tone gives you the idea of a different depth. Trying not to paint around the cable cars because I don't want that sense of things being separate to the environment. And using those different tones really help to build that mountain range picture and that background that you want. So I'm going to go in and put some trees in with my Moonglow. I'm just going to mix this up with my little mop brush. Okay, so I've got some Moonglow, and then I've got some Moonglow, some Cobalt Blue and a little bit of red light. This is much lighter. So these are going to be for my trees in the distance. So I'm going to put them here down this ridge, and they are just on that ridge. So trying to keep the tone similar to my painting so that they don't take over. I'll pick up some darker different tones just to help out. And we're just doing quick little downward strokes. Nobody needs to have much more information than that. And they're just going to work down this slope. Little, because they're going further down. And just drop one or two darker ones in the mix. Just to mix it up. So I'm going to do a similar thing as I come. Let me just think. I'm not going to put the big trees here because I think otherwise we'll distract from these. I think you wouldn't know where to look. So I'm going to just put a few trees in this area. Just using my little brush. And then maybe one or two up here. Little ones. And we know that they're only little tiny blobs, but the viewer will see them as trees. Honestly. Yeah? They're blobs to us, but the viewer will see them as trees. And that's all good. So let's have a think. Do I put a tree in or not? I could put a tree here in the foreground, which would help maybe. Let's do. So just thicker paint. And you just doing the top of that tree, and then I'm going to swap onto my mop brush, my little mop brush, because I much prefer my mop brushes for doing trees, because they build up the sense of filling the space. I'm just going to soften some of those. I might go back in and put some smaller branches on using my bigger brush, but so this is just Moonglow. You could just use Lunar Violet, you could use any of the purpley colours, mix your own. So just working down the tree, leaving some spaces, gradually getting bigger, not too quickly. It's just blobs, don't be worried about trees, they're just blobs. We're just letting the brush do the work. And I'm going to run it all the way down the page, so then we don't have to worry about the tree trunk particularly. And go back up and put some other little bits on if you think you've got a gap. There's my little brush. We'll put some little smaller branches on with my little brush while it's still wet. There we go. A nice tree. And you could put several trees on if you wanted. That would be really, really nice. So I'm going to stick with the Moonglow to do these little cable cars as well. So Cobalt Blue, and then this Moonglow should make quite a nice sort of silvery blue colour. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of that red light in again. We're not using many colours, but we're just using them well. And let me mix up that Moonglow a little bit with a bit of water. Okay, back to this little number 2 brush. I'm trying to keep it painty. Trying to keep Moonglow dropping in for the windows. I can go back in with that if need be, and we can darken it later. So a little bit more water in the mix for this one, same again. Moonglow in for these windows. Doesn't matter if it runs in because it's all harmonised. It'll be fine. A little bit more water for this one. Less detail. Moonglow. Okay. So the last bit I've got to do for this foreground is to put some of the shadows on. So I'm going to put more water into this mix that we've just used here, and I'm just going to put some gentle shadows on, and then wash with some water underneath, so you get that sense of it being an undulating space. Drop a little bit of that Moonglow in there as well, and for a bit of a deeper shadow there. So plenty of water. A little bit of that Moonglow. So there, I'm at a point where I'm going to dry that off and see where we're at. So here I am. We've dried it off. I did dab these two with a paper towel before I dried it. Just take that extra paint off because I wanted this to be the focus one. I think this tree's worked really nicely. I love the granulation that the Moonglow's created for that. I think these distant trees have worked well, and we can see the shapes of those hills. You could just put the cable cars on at this point and it would be a really nice painting. I do want to put some people on, and I do also want to darken some of the features around the cable car. So I'm just going to pick up some Moonglow again and my little number 2 brush, so it's a bit thicker, and I'm just going to use that to put a tiny bit more detail on this cable car. I'm just going to soften that. Just fresh water and soften it into the wash. Okay, and then a little bit on this one, a lighter wash, so it stands out less fussy, less information. Same on this, less fussy, less information. But you can see what it is. That's what the aim is. So I'm going to just carry on using just these colours to paint some little skiers. Into the painting. Right, they are just tiny little blobs really. As if they've been coming down this ski slope. And just to enhance that, I'm going to just get a really, really watery mix of the shadow colour. And I'm just going to put on some of their tracks. Sure, he's a snowboarder. Snowboarders sit for hours on the slopes. Maybe somewhere up here. Walking. Skis in hand, I'm going to put some skis up here. Because they're falling over. Actually, they could be the ski poles, I suppose, couldn't they? There could be, there we go, look, we could be skiing. There's my little... Just put a bit more onto the person. There we go. I'm going to put one up here, a little one. You could put a person here as well if you wanted a big, you know, a bigger person. That's up to you. I'm just going to put this one's little tracks on. I think this one's quite skilled. Soften those in with a bit of water. some little blobs. And then I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of blue into that shadow mix, Cobalt Blue, and I'm just going to drop a little bit of shadow into here. So that you get that sense. So the last thing to do is to put these cables on. So I'm going to use my Lunar Violet, my Moonlight Glow, and see how we go. That's all right for that one. Let's put this one on. There we go. If you weren't wanting to just stick to these colours, you could have dropped in a little bit of Payne's Grey. But actually, I'm quite liking this sort of monotone feeling. There we go, a bit more definition of that. And there we have it. I'm just going to pop a signature on down here. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I can't resist a little bit of pen onto here. There we go, just to add a little bit of something. But I'm leaving that one. So there we are. Hope you've enjoyed that one. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to painting with you again. Like, subscribe, and if you like my style of painting, then please consider joining my Patreon channel. The link will be in the comments. But for now, have a lovely day. Happy painting.